It's heartbreaking to see anybody in that condition, even more so a one-year-old baby.
An absolutely horrific story out of Texas. A one-year-old little boy mauled to death by Pitbulls at his babysitter's house. And it turns out this babysitter wasn't even there. She left the child alone with her teenage daughter and very large, vicious dogs. Now a family is in mourning, and the babysitter is awaiting indictment. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. This is an unbelievably sad story. We have one-year-old Jiryiah Johnson, who lost his life on Monday after he was mauled by multiple dogs inside of a San Antonio area home. He underwent multiple surgeries to try to save his life, but the injuries to his face, throat, chest, they were too great. According to the Bexar County, Texas Sheriff, 36-year-old Heather Rodriguez was a caretaker for Jiryiah. The sheriff says that Jiryiah's parents knew Rodriguez had dogs, but they weren't warned about their aggressive behavior in the past, and I'll get to that. On Monday, deputies say that Rodriguez left Jiryiah with her 13-year-old daughter, and it's unclear why Rodriguez had left the home or how long exactly she was gone, but during that time, the teen and Jiryiah were attacked.
That 13-year-old and the baby were in a bedroom. My understanding is that there was an effort to keep the baby sequestered from the dogs because these dogs were known to cause damage. At a certain point, the little girl was, the 13-year-old was in the bedroom with the one-year-old little boy when the dogs forced their way into the room. My understanding is that the door leading into that room was already damaged by the dogs at some point before that rendered it not completely secure. The dogs were able to force their way into the bedroom and at that point began biting the baby. The little girl, the 13-year-old, was able to maintain control of the baby, but at this point, and what's being described to me is it was almost a tug of war for the baby between at least one of the dogs and the little girl. At a certain point, additional dogs came into the room as well, and then they joined in the attack. The little girl then spent several minutes trying to fight them off. She was able to get the baby and herself into a bathroom attached to that bedroom. The dogs then also went into that bathroom. They forced their way into the bathroom. They then began to resume their attack on not just the baby, but also on the 13-year-old. She was also bitten in the process. At a certain point, she had to break away and physically left the baby behind in the bathroom being attacked while she went to go get her cell phone to call for help. She was able to grab her cell phone, come back, and resume fighting with the dogs over the baby. At a certain point, she was able to call for help. She then took the baby and went into another bedroom, at which point she was able to put the baby on the floor and barricade the door using her body to prevent the dogs from coming into that bedroom. When deputies arrived, that's when they were able to come in, take custody of the scene, take control of the scene. They found the baby there, began first aid, called for EMS, who was there pretty quickly. EMS was able to transport the baby to the hospital.
And you have to call out the brave actions of the 13-year-old who was trying to fight off these dogs. But what you can see are these photos from inside the home that just show severe damage to a door that appears to be incredibly damaged. And I mentioned the teenager, the sheriff, Javier Salazar, praised this teenager for her bravery and said she's likely going to be dealing with some very severe psychological turmoil after what was a truly brutal attack.
Thankfully, she non-life-threatening injuries on the little girl. Again, I consider her a hero in this situation. She got left in a pretty bad situation for any 13-year-old to be left in charge of a baby like that. But in a house full of vicious dogs, what did this lady, the suspect, think was going to happen at that point? All said and done, this attack was about 2 minutes. But I mean, the dogs, I haven't seen the dogs, but they're described to me as XL pits or bulldogs. So in other words, they're very thick, very heavy, muscular dogs. And so, for a 13-year-old little girl, I haven't seen how big she is, but for her to be able to fight for 2 minutes is a long time to fight. When you're fighting, when you're outnumbered, we're talking at least 2, possibly 3 dogs that she was fighting with, probably each weighing more than she did. My understanding is it's 4 dogs. This little girl did her very best to fight for 2 minutes, and I think that, God willing, this baby survives. I think it was in no small part due to the heroic actions of this little girl. Super proud of her. What I can tell you is that at that scene, they really gave our deputies a hard time as far as they didn't want to give us the dogs. And then it was, okay, we're just going to give you this one, but not these others. The deputies stepped in and said, no, we're going to take all the dogs. Our deputies, in conjunction with animal control, we took them all in an abundance of caution. If we're able to find out that one of the dogs or several of the dogs were not responsible for it, then fine, perhaps those can go back. But she seemed to be more concerned with what was going on with those dogs than with the fact that her inaction, her omissions, almost caused the death of a baby, and still might, God forbid, if this ends up happening.
Unfortunately, this is what happened. Jiryiah died around 9:30 p.m. Monday night. His parents, Erica Castro and Jiryiah Johnson, they rushed to be with their son at the hospital. While he was undergoing surgery, his mom posted a link for donations on her Facebook page saying they were struggling to get Jiryiah covered by insurance. The family has now started a GoFundMe page to pay for Jiryiah's funeral expenses. We're going to put that up for you too if you want to donate and support the family. Erica even pinned photos of Jiryiah as a newborn to her Facebook page, so they're right at the top, and he turned 1 just in June. One of the last posts visible on her profile shows Jiryiah all set to go to his first day of early preschool in August. Reporting indicates that Heather Rodriguez is now charged with 3 crimes. There's causing serious bodily injury to the child with intent, which is our understanding to be a first-degree felony, causing bodily injury to a child recklessly through omission, believe that's a second-degree felony, and child endangerment by placing a child in imminent danger of bodily injury, which can result up to 2 years in prison. That is a state jail felony. And it's being reported that she's currently in jail on a $100,000 bond. Now, here's where the story takes another turn. The sheriff says this isn't the first time that Rodriguez has been in trouble because of her dogs, because in April, Bexar County deputies were called because a man was trying to get out of his car, but the dogs had apparently surrounded him. Now, Rodriguez was issued a citation for not having her dogs on a leash, and they were deemed aggressive, but they were ultimately returned to her. Now, as for Rodriguez's criminal history, we checked TruthFinder to get some information about her background, and in fact, in 2010, when she was 21 years old, she was arrested after a warrant was issued. It seems that she hadn't paid a fine that the court had ordered her to pay, so she got hauled off to jail. By the way, we actually use TruthFinder a lot to do research for our stories here on Sidebar, and sometimes what you find on there, pretty shocking. Even typing in your own name, you might be surprised at what comes up. And that's because, look, TruthFinder is one of the largest public record search services in the United States. You can even use it to pull up registered sex offenders in your area, which, when you think about it, is super helpful for peace of mind. And with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. So if you're interested right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC-Sidebar. For now, they're in the custody of animal control. The sheriff said that the 13-year-old was bitten by the dogs during the attack, but wasn't taken to the hospital, at least not at the same time as Jiryiah. She stayed back to talk to the deputies and explain what happened. And court records show that Rodriguez's next court date is in December. All right, so I want to talk more about this, and I want to bring on criminal defense attorney Florina Altshiler to talk more about the complexities of this legal case. Maybe it's not complex, but I will tell you it is heartbreaking, to say the least. This is a tough story. Florina, good to see you. Talk to me about her liability. I mentioned she faces 3 charges now. She first was facing 1, then it was upgraded. She faces now 3. Causing serious bodily injury to the child with intent. My understanding is that is a first-degree felony. Causing bodily injury to a child recklessly through omission. I believe that is a second-degree felony. And child endangerment by placing a child in imminent danger of bodily injury, which is a state jail felony. 3 different charges, but also overlapping set of facts. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, what a tragedy. Anytime a young child is killed, it is absolutely horrific. In terms of the criminal charges, really what it's going to come down to is her state of mind. The difference between the charges is her mental culpable conduct. So what did she know and when did she know it? Intent is really difficult to prove, especially in light of the facts here. Recklessness, however, I think is going to be a much easier reach. And the question is going to be, did she know that these pit bulls were dangerous? Did she ignore that risk? Would a reasonable person have not done what she did under the circumstances? And there's a big difference between negligence and recklessness. So if she was negligent, she's not guilty of the higher mental state of recklessness. So it's not just would a reasonable person have done this or not done this, it's under these circumstances, did she really have prior notice and should she have acted differently? In other words, where's her conduct, her ignoring a known risk, really egregious? And here, with the death of a very young child, it sounds pretty egregious to me.
It was foreseeable. There was a substantial disregard for this extreme risk. The question I have, though, why charge the intent? I mean, I think they're still developing the facts, but if you're saying to a jury, we're saying this was she intended to do this versus she recklessly did this, it feels like a little bit of confusion as to what really what happened here. Now, you might be saying prosecutors are trying to hedge their bets. They want to convict her of the most serious charges they can, so why not throw everything at a jury to consider? But I did think that was interesting that on one hand, they're saying it was serious bodily injury, intend to cause that. Then it was bodily injury and recklessness.
Yeah, we don't know all of the facts right now. I would imagine for a prosecutor in good faith to charge that intent charge, there has to be some information to suggest that she wanted to cause injury to this child. And from the facts as we know them, I really don't see anything to suggest that she purposefully placed this child with the Pitbulls to have the Pitbulls attack the child and cause injury to the child.
Right.
That being said, there may well be facts to suggest that, which makes it a very different ballgame and a way more egregious situation.
And by the way, if we're talking about intent, first-degree felony, my understanding in Texas, that can carry 5 to 99 years in prison. But second degree, even if it just comes out that she's going to be charged with recklessness by omission, that she failed to do something, that could carry, my understanding, 2 to 20 years in prison. So very significant what we're talking about here. How much does that prior citation about the dogs play a role in this?
Well, if there was no prior citation, there really would be no way to charge her because she would have had no reason to know that these dogs are dangerous. Given that there's a prior citation, that is evidence of notice that she had that these dogs are dangerous. And that is going to be the basis of the recklessness charge and proof of her mental state. She was cited before, she knew these dogs are dangerous, and she blatantly disregarded that known risk and placed these dogs with a very young child.
Could her defense be, if I really thought they were dangerous, why would I leave my 13-year-old daughter with them?
Well, and that's potentially where they're going with the intent. Maybe she really wanted the young child to be injured. Maybe she really wanted to cause injury to a child because, right, why would you leave dogs that you know are dangerous with a young child and your daughter? It doesn't really make sense. And so I expect that she will argue that these were safe animals and she didn't expect the animals to attack the child. At the same time, she's been cited previously. There's a prior incident. She should know better.
By the way, from a criminal point of view, not even talking a civil point of view, but a criminal point of view, if someone has a dog and the dog has never been aggressive, has never attacked anybody, but on one given day, if this situation happens and the dog does attack somebody in the home and attacks a small child and kills them, there's not a situation where that person can be held criminally responsible? Does there need to be a past or a knowledge of this dog being vicious of some kind or violent of some kind? In other words, if this was a situation where nothing had happened with these dogs before, you kind of alluded to it, you don't think she would have been criminally charged?
Not only would she not be criminally charged, I don't even see how there could be civil liability. Most states in the country have the one bite rule. And as vicious as this sounds, you get one bite. The second bite, now you're on notice. So you really, the assumption is that domestic animals are safe. And absent specific knowledge of an attack, which has to happen first, there's really no reason to believe that the animal is dangerous. And so the first bite is considered to be unexpected, sudden, right. No notice, no liability. Once you've had a first bite, now you're on notice and now you should have known better. The second bite, there's civil liability and potentially, like we see here, you could be charged criminally depending on the facts.
Do police bear any responsibility here in the sense that they cited her for the dogs, but the dogs were returned to her? Do they bear any responsibility or no?
Well, first of all, definitely no criminal liability by the police.
Right.
For civil liability, it is really difficult to be able to attach civil liability to law enforcement absent egregious conduct that the municipality or their employer actually directed them to do. And here, I don't see how we're going to reach that. It is not uncommon for a citation to be issued for a bite, for a dog attack, and for the dog to be returned to the pet owner.
You might not know the answer to this, but I want to end on this. And again, really the most important thing is this family. I hope that they, take the time they need to really recover from this, because it's just an unbelievable tragedy, and we're putting up that GoFundMe page. The dog or the dogs, in these situations, again, you might not know the answer to this, are the dogs put down? Are they a danger to society?
Generally speaking, after a second bite or attack, they are eligible to be put down, and the pet owner would be entitled to due process and a hearing on the issue of whether or not the dog should be put down. And that goes to also support why law enforcement can't be responsible for returning the dog the first time, because the pet owner is entitled to due process on that issue. And a first bite is not something where they put a dog down. After a second bite and after an attack that's this horrific, I believe the dog should be put down. I don't know how she's going to be able to win the hearing if she contests it on whether or not the dog or dogs should be put down.
What a difficult situation. Our thoughts and prayers are with that family. Again, it's hard to imagine this happened, and we'll see what happens with the criminal case against Ms. Rodriguez. Florina Altshiler, thank you so much for coming on and having answers to every one of my questions. This is why we love having you on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and really just a horrific tragedy.
Now, after we finished our interview with Florina, we actually got the opportunity to sit down with the sheriff here, Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar, to get a little bit more information about the case. Here's what he had to say. All right, I am joined right now by Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar to talk more about this. Sheriff, thanks so much for coming on. I think the most appropriate place to start is, how's the family doing? What can you share with us about how they're doing at this point in time? I know there's a GoFundMe set up, but this just feels like an unimaginable situation for them. So how are they doing?
I mean, look, I can't even begin to imagine what this family is going through, nor would any of us that are parents ever want to. But with that being said, our agency is doing everything in our power to help them receive the justice that they are entitled to. With that being said, we're also in the process of working with a nonprofit locally that helps in situations like this with funeral expenses to help them out with that. Obviously, as parents, none of us are ever prepared to go through, but we're doing our best to take care of them as victims of the crime victims of compensation, everything that they're entitled to, but also from a human perspective, trying to help them out with that next step.
That's great. That's great. And they're definitely going to need it. I mentioned this to you before we got on, but this is also a very difficult scene for your team to respond to. How are the officers who responded to this scene? How are they doing?
Well, understandably, I think as first responders, we've all been in that situation where you saw or had to take some action, and after the fact, you get to thinking, "Wow, I can't believe that I just saw that or had to deal with that." So obviously, for them, they're having a time dealing with that. Now, with that being said, the good thing is we have resources available to help us deal with that. So I have all the faith in the world they will be okay at the end of the day. But with that being said, we understand that it's a process. We're helping them to understand that it's a process. There's nothing wrong with you if you're experiencing A, B, C, and D. That's all part of the process. We just have to work through it.
Talking about this case, it's my understanding Mr. Rodriguez has been hit with 3 charges, and one of those charges is, and correct me if I'm wrong, causing serious bodily injury to the child with intent. In other words, is it the belief that she intended to harm this young child?
No, I don't believe that that's the case, but through her negligence, she put him in a situation and her own daughter in a situation where she absolutely should have known and could have known and probably did know that there was a distinct possibility that this was going to happen. And through that extreme negligence, that's what caused this to happen.
Any idea why she left Jiryiah with her daughter, where she was, what she was doing?
Well, from what we're hearing, she got called into work at the last minute and she had to go to work. But with that being said, that still doesn't offer you the excuse to put children, one your own and one that's not your own, that's there, that it's your responsibility, your financial responsibility even to take care of this child. Nothing in my mind, nothing could justify leaving those kids in that situation that was absolutely just a recipe for disaster.
Has she said anything?
She hasn't really, from the day we brought her in, she completely, zipped her mouth and didn't tell us anything, which is fine. Obviously, that's your right to do so. But from a human decency perspective, at least explain your actions to us to help us try to understand what it is that prompted all this.
You talked about in one of your press conferences the brave actions of this 13-year-old to protect herself, protect this 1-year-old. I can't imagine what she went through. How is she doing right now?
Well, that's one of the complications in the case. I mean, look, honestly, this 13-year-old little girl, she was put in an untenable situation that, she did her best. She kept the baby in a room because she knew that those dogs were out there and they were not going to, it just was probably not going to be a good environment for the baby. So they were in the bedroom. Unfortunately, that door had already been damaged by the dogs. There was a big hole in the bottom of the door that these dogs caused that damage to the door. And they were able to get in through that opening in the door and access the baby. During the attack, it's described to us that she actually tried to lift the baby up over her head to keep him away from the dogs. And at one point, one of the dogs actually jumped on a piece of furniture, grabbed the baby, and then pulled the baby out of her hands. Bedroom to bathroom to another bedroom, fighting these dogs the whole way. And then literally at that last bedroom, she made her last stand. She put the baby on the floor and then with her body barricaded the door so the dogs couldn't get in. I mean, it sounds like something out of a horror movie. And this little girl hung in there like a champ and did what she needed to do, in my opinion. With that being said, at present, one of her family members has actually taken her to a different part of the state. Now, I don't know if they're trying to stymie our investigation at this point. But what it's doing worse than anything is we're no longer assured that she's in a position to get the best psychological help that she could get, because we know that she's seen and been through a traumatic experience. For anybody, you put even a seasoned law enforcement officer through a situation like that, and we're going to need some serious psychological help afterwards. This is a 13-year-old girl that was just playing a video game one minute. The next minute, she's in a life or death struggle with these dogs. So I don't know that she is doing okay at this point. And we're doing everything we can to find where they are, to access, and then hopefully be able to put her in a position where she can get that help.
Do you know, just to amplify that, do you know who took her and where they took her or why they took her?
It was a relative that took her to another part of the state. Now, again, they may be doing that. Maybe that's their version of helping her to deal with this. They're putting her in a place where she's surrounded by family. I just don't know. Or did they do it to stymie our investigation, to deny us access to be able to talk to her? I'm not sure what the intent was there, but I can just tell you from our perspective what the effect is we're just not sure that she's in a position to heal from all of this, physically and mentally.
If you can, Sheriff, do you know what's going to happen with the dogs?
Yes. So yesterday, in addition to walking the warrants on the suspect, what we also did was we filed seizure warrants for all 3 animals. So that day, she surrendered one of the dogs, which was the main aggressor, is my understanding. And then the other 2, she gave us some resistance, but finally agreed to turn them over to animal control. Just she didn't surrender them fully the way she did with that one. Our understanding is that at least one of those dogs, probably, or at least 2 of those dogs, probably all 3, took part in the attack. So what we did is we went and we filed a seizure warrant for those dogs, and those dogs are now seized by the sheriff's office. And obviously we're going to have to make some tough decisions. In all likelihood, those dogs will be euthanized as a result of what happened.
And that's because of not only this incident, but correct me if I'm wrong, there was at least one prior incident with this dog where Rodriguez was cited because of having unleashed dogs, right? That's our understanding.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Back in April, I believe, one of our deputies responded where these same dogs were loose. They got out of the house and they were holding a man in his car. Basically, they were barking and growling that he couldn't get out of his car. He did what he should do. He called 911. We responded. We were able to get the dogs secured. But she was cited at that time for having loose animals. Now, thankfully, at that time, nobody was bitten. But because of that, there were no citation. Nothing beyond the citation was done. And there was no report to animal control because of the situation had seemed to have resolved itself. Now, but from the other side of that, absolutely, this lady should have known what exactly she had on her hands in those dogs. You know that these dogs are not, you know that they're in fact vicious. You know that they're dangerous. Why would you expose children to that?
So, Sheriff, just to follow up on that, clearly it's going to be a huge point for her legal case. It goes to the idea of this was foreseeable, something like this could happen. You had knowledge about the danger of the dogs. But in terms of the fact that she got the dogs back, it sounds like there was not more that could be done. But at the same time, there was an understanding of how dangerous these dogs were. I guess I'm trying to understand is why were they not taken from her? Why were they given back to Rodriguez?
Well, in that instance, loose dogs, that's a fairly common occurrence, right? Who of us hasn't had a dog squeeze past them when you open the door to go check the mail? In this instance, that was what we had in essence. I mean, while they did bark and frighten a neighbor, at that point, I don't believe we had any evidence that they had physically hurt anybody or attacked anybody. So for us, you know, we did what we could at that point. We issued the citation. But again, that's the onus is on the dog owner at that point to realize, okay, my dogs either escape from the yard, they know how to get out, it's time to start barricading and keeping them contained. But again, the onus is on that dog owner to do the responsible thing. And clearly in this instance, she did not do the responsible thing. She did the criminally negligent thing.
And just to put a bow on this to make sure, she's facing 3 charges, 1 first-degree felony, 1 second-degree felony, 1 state jail felony. Am I right about that? And are there going to be any additional charges that she could face?
I mean, at this point, those are the charges. I don't foresee, you know, anything with what we have now. I don't foresee any additional charges. But with that being said, if new facts come to light and it leads us to believe that filing an additional charge for something would be beneficial to the case or to the welfare of this family, absolutely, we'll do a heartbeat. So,
Sheriff, Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar, first of all, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for the work that you and your team are doing. And if you can, please send the family our very best. We're actually going to put their GoFundMe up, so if anybody wants to support and can support, they can do so. And again, good luck on finding this 13-year-old, and hopefully she's doing well. But it's just a tragic situation, and I'm so sorry that this family and you and the community have to go through this. It's one of the more difficult cases I've seen and had to report on. So again, I'm so sorry this happened in your jurisdiction. But again, thank you so much and appreciate all that you've done.
Thank you, sir. Stay safe. God bless.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.